All right, so a lot of interesting news is happening right now all around the world, specifically with Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Khashoggi, and of course, Iran, which we're going to get into in this video. Because already there are shocking admissions by the U.S. president himself that shed light on this entire situation, where the United States came disastrously close to bombing Iran. And even though the physical bombs haven't dropped yet, we're also going to cover in this video how the United States already is at war with Iran on two major important fronts. And of course, how those fronts are only escalating. But before we do that, just wanted to notify you, because these videos usually get demonetized, that as an independent media organization that is under attack, that of course we would not exist if it was not for your support. And one way you could support us is by simply buying a t-shirt in our Teespring store, which of course the link will be in the description below. And sincerely thank you to everyone who is keeping us going. Now, of course, there's a lot to get into on this specific deep dive of American foreign policy. Of course, a lot of the attention has been centered around Iran, with, of course, the U.S. president coming out himself saying that his administration is filled with doves and hawks, and that his presidential national security advisor, John Bolton, is, and this is a quote, is an absolute hawk, and if it was up to him, he'll take on the whole world at one time. And that to me sounds like the description of an absolute lunatic madman who is mentally unstable and at the very least needs to see a psychologist, if not to be fully restrained at a mental institution. And of course, this information comes out on the heels of Donald Trump admittingly himself being 10 minutes away from bombing another country, which honestly has sparked a very interesting discussion, because as you could see by the meme that's going around there, a lot of Trump supporters are complimenting Trump on canceling the own military strike that he ordered himself, while other people, of course, are saying that he was doing something, that he was under pressure, that his conscience kicked in, and therefore he made the right decision. But at the end of this video, what I hope to do is to give you a clear answer on this major debate that's happening right now. But one thing that is not debatable is the fact that the mainstream media is pushing for war with Iran, with many mainstream media outlets and their, quote, pundits shaming and attacking Donald Trump for not following through with, of course, his own military plans, using just the most insane backwards talking points with absolutely no merit in truth, but should be seen for what it is, just the absolute bloodlust of the military-industrial complex trying to make a buck, which has been brilliantly highlighted by Dore, who's also here on YouTube, who in his own videos uncovered during his live stream that one of the experts on CBS News that was ushering this bloodlust for profit, this supposed CBS war expert, was actually a Raytheon board member that would profit drastically if this initial bombing, if this initial war, proxy war of world powers would actually happen. And of course, the world powers would be China, Russia versus the United States, with Iran being the proxy that a conflict would happen in. But I definitely recommend watching this video. It will be in the description below. And also, cheers on to Tucker Carlson, who has been one of, if not the only, voices in the mainstream media who is on, of course, Fox News, that actually covered this important foreign policy topic from a sane perspective and gave you the arguments that you would never hear on the mainstream media. On the contrary, criticizing them for their backwards logic on all of this, and even going after Mr. Mustache himself, bloodthirsty John Bolton, by calling him a, quote, bureaucratic tapeworm that periodically reemerges to cause pain and suffering. This is another great video. It will be in the description below as well. But those are the few voices, as well as independent media that mainly gets censored by Google. But those are the only voices going against this insane push for war. Again, people don't understand. This is not just creating a war that's going to have just insane effects on human life. Insanely dangerous, pushing the world powers against each other. Hundreds of thousands, if not millions of lives at stake. But this war, of course, would cost trillions of dollars and have severe negative impacts on the world economy. And already, the proxy conflict, the major war that the United States has been raging against Iran, has already caused negative global finance ramifications with the price of oil going up. Not only because of these latest tensions, but because of specific sanctions that the United States has on Iran, which is one of the world's biggest oil producers, one of them, and their oil can't be on the world market because the United States said so. And again, it's not just delusion fueling this. It's not just Bolton and the mainstream media Raytheon warhawks who are trying to make a buck here. It's also Donald Trump's Secretary of State, former CIA head, who admits he lies, cheats, and steals, that are trying to steer him to go into war with Iran, which is absolutely insane. Now, I would consider us extremely lucky that Donald Trump didn't push the proverbial button, and as he said himself, 10 minutes before launch, before an attack, which he even uncovered would kill an estimated 150 Iranians, which he said the price was too big for compared to a drone. 10 minutes was the difference that saved us from a disaster. But the U.S.'s wars, and actually the wars that have been raging on against Iran for decades now, ever since after 9/11, the Project for a New American Century, and neoconservatives started being at the helm of major administrations, including Obama's administration, by the way. Ever since the neocons have been pushing for their agenda, we have seen Iran in the major crosshairs. And one of the ways that the United States is already at war with Iran is, of course, economically. And Donald Trump is doubling down on that particular front, tweeting very erroneously, by the way, saying, quote, Iran cannot have nuclear weapons. Well, that's what the Obama-Iran deal was guaranteeing, which many independent observers say Iran was following very closely and never violated. Trump and Israel, specifically Israel here, is pointing to intelligence that they did violate it, that, of course, no one could see this intelligence. No. You're just supposed to believe it, and the mainstream media, of course, regurgitates it to you. But as far as any specific evidence, there hasn't been any of Iran violating this Iran nuclear deal, which prevented them from having nuclear weapons, which Donald Trump erroneously tweeted they would have somehow got. And again, everything here falls flat on its logic, specifically with American foreign policy, which has been trying to get their own Iran deal under Donald Trump, but instead of with Iran, with North Korea. When you look at the deal that the United States, when you look at the demands that the United States wants with North Korea, it is almost identical to the Iran nuclear deal. And Donald Trump was the one who got rid of this Iran nuclear deal with the, of course, pleasure and support of Israel. And, of course, Saudi Arabia in the region that also profits off shutting off their competitor from the world market with already U.S. sanctions on Iran that make the gas and oil prices in the world more expensive. So again, the whole tweet that he just stated, totally erroneous, but continuing on saying, quote, we are putting major additional sanctions on Iran on Monday. I look forward to the day that sanctions come off Iran and they become a productive and prosperous nation. Again, the sooner the better. And again, very just duplicitous statement here, to be completely honest with you, because the facts absolutely matter here. Now, Donald Trump even said himself that he would be, quote, Iran's best friend, and that the country would be wealthy only if it renounced nuclear weapons. And of course, the Iranian officials are responding, saying, hey, dude, we don't have nuclear weapons. We weren't seeking nuclear weapons. And of course, there could be lots of criticism towards Iran, and some rightfully so, but the bigger perspective here needs to be understood. Their side needs to be understood here, because again, the United States on two fronts now is at war with Iran. The bombs haven't dropped yet. They came close to being dropped, but economically, the U.S. is directly aggressing and starting a war economically with Iran, and also with on a second front with cyber attacks. As the Associated Press is reporting, with of course their anonymous sources, quote, U.S. officials, that the United States has already launched cyber attacks on Iran after, of course, the downing of this drone. Cyber attacks, which of course were approved by U.S. President Donald Trump. Now, the AP says that they got confirmation of this from 3 officials, including one who outlined the scope of the attacks and how they happened. But people, you need to understand here, cyber attacks and economic attacks are acts of war. The agenda that Donald Trump has been pushing is being moved forward, and is being moved forward in many ways, with not just the physical act of dropping bombs, but a multifaceted attack that needs to be understood here. Because again, the pro-war hawks won't be talking about this at all, as well as the naive Trump supporters that sadly don't want to see the light on this important issues. And again, sanctions and cyber warfare have been a key front with American foreign policy, specifically talking about sanctions, since of course the US dollar provides the US world hegemony and its power on the world stage, and of course the control of economic markets leads to the United States enforcing their will or their agenda or whatever they're after through, of course, economic ways, which they also have been doing to Turkey, that has pledged to buy Russian military defense systems, specifically the S-400 systems, which of course the United States retaliated from Turkey buying these missile defense systems, from aligning themselves more with Russia by putting sanctions on them, which Turkey looks like it is set on still acquiring regardless of the economic sanction cost that it faces because of this. And it is defying sanctions, but the ramifications of that are still very severe and clear and do have a major impact. As even recently, we saw a major election loss in Turkey, which many people believe will be the beginning of the end of the long-time Turkish president Erdogan. Sanctions have been used very devastatingly in Venezuela, while of course the U.S. mainstream media shows you and highlights specific instances of horrors happening in Venezuela, but again, failed to link that some of these economic horrors are linked to the direct economic sanctions that the United States has against Venezuela, which of course also is closely aligned with Russia and China. You're starting to see the bigger picture here. Now, of course, from our own reporting on Venezuela, it has been a combination of factors that have led to the horrible situation unfolding in that country that we saw ourselves on the ground. But it's important to note here that sanctions are one of them. Again, also, this report that we did in Venezuela will be in the description below, and I definitely recommend you watch it to get a bigger perspective on exactly what is happening in that country. But again, these sanctions that the United States is just going to be launching are severe, are another escalation, are another "what the frick are you doing" moment that are only going to raise tensions and bring us closer to war. You think the cyber warfare helps to calm down the situation, ease tensions? You think launching cyber warfare in the country is going to help? And of course, Iran, they're definitely not perfect, to say the least. They're answering back with also their own heated rhetoric. They're also not a perfect representation of their people that are mainly peaceful Shia people who, when encounter American citizens in their own country, in Iran, usually predominantly are overly nice to them. And again, the situation is only going to get worse here as the United States is ultimately doing the bidding of their close allies, Saudi Arabia and Israel here, because again, there's no benefit to the United States to be this aggressive against Iran. There's absolutely nothing that will benefit you, especially as a citizen of the United States, when this potential conflict will happen. Because I still believe it will happen, most likely in the fall of this year on some kind of level. It's already raging on in many different ways, but for me, the situation will only get more dangerous from here. And how can you deny the fact when seeing all the information presented in front of you, as well as the very fact that, again, Trump many times doesn't morally, consciously do the right things sometimes, as he even dismissed a request by the United Nations to investigate the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. Again, the whole Khashoggi thing is also another important thing to deep dive into, but I'm not going to go into that in this specific video. But he specifically refused this request because it would, quote, jeopardize American weapon sales to Saudi Arabia. So the conscious thing, that's not an important one here. The amount of accidents that could happen here are also very big, as we're even seeing. Troops in Iraq are seeing a, quote, spike in indirect fire attacks. And, of course, Iran is being blamed for these attacks. All it takes is one goofball in the military, whether in the Iranian or the U.S. military, to make a simple mistake, a simple accident. With, of course, the war games, the exercises, the amount of U.S. military personnel, the amount of Iranian forces and proxy forces in the region, all it takes is one little spark. That little spark would create the next potential war, which, again, the United States is dead set on. This is, again, which Trump's hand-selected, hand-picked advisor promised in 2017 there would be regime change in Iran. Now, of course, he was wrong on his predictions when it would happen. He was wrong on so many things. But literally, there's video of him not so long ago promising regime change in Iran. And this is the thinking, these are the words of a dangerous lunatic steering the U.S. president, who honestly, out of all perspectives here, most likely looked at the numbers, because politics is all about power. And I do believe, convince me if I'm wrong, show me any evidence if you think I'm wrong. Politics is all about power. And I do believe Trump honestly looked at the possibilities of him being reelected, because invading Iran, attacking Iran is not a popular position. But with any war, there is usually initially a spike in support, and then that spike goes dramatically down. And I do believe he saw this as something that would make him lose re-election. And this is really why, not a conscious thing, but really why he decided not to launch these attacks. Because, again, Donald Trump has even publicly stated he doesn't care about civilian casualties. He cares about getting the job done. And this is all about power, in my opinion. And if it wasn't for his base, some of them not being naive, some of them calling him out, some of them screaming, some of them saying no, Tucker Carlson and other individuals saying, hey, this is an absolute stupid idea. If it wasn't for those few individuals, if it wasn't for you, if it wasn't for us saying no, stop killing and launching other people for profit, other than that, there's no well, why? Like, what? Again, I'm going off tangents here. But honestly, it is in my direct understanding and my direct opinion that if it wasn't for the few individuals speaking out about this, that if it wasn't for the unpopularity of this, that Donald Trump would have gone forward with this. Prove me wrong. This is the conclusion I came to with some of the evidence we saw. What do you think? Always appreciate the constructive criticism, the feedback, and you guys challenging me. The only way to move towards the truth is with having a proper, honest, open discussion, and I hope to have that with you in the comment section below. Thank you again so much for watching. Thank you again for even supporting us, because if it wasn't for you, again, this video is going to get really hit. But regardless of that, the subject matter, the things we discussed here need to be discussed, because very few people actually go into these deep dives as I am. So if you appreciate them, check out a shirt and share this video, because if you don't, no one else will. Thank you again so much for watching. Stay tuned for more here on WeAreChange.org. 7 videos a week.